Formula 1 has one of the most diverse fan bases in the entire sporting industry. We have furries, children, men with dementia, cuckolds, quite a few of them, all of which supporting 19 talented drivers and also Lance Stroll. So today we're going to go through every type of Formula 1 fan, starting off with Red Bull. Now, with the most dominant team in Formula 1 history, you would expect this team's fan base to be having a fun time right now. Well, unfortunately, it's not. This team has been eternally boned all the way back since Barcelona of 2023, especially when their car decided it wanted to become a cave diver for Perez in every race. Now, this team's fanbase has only really existed since it joined in 2005. However, they've had some pretty good luck since they joined. After Sebastian Vettel's 4 world championships, as well as Max Verstappen's, so surely things are going well this season, right? Well, they might have been if Max wasn't driving a glorified dildo in comparison to the championship leading car. Because their car is so bad that even Max can't win with it. Now, before your Discord mods start shouting, "Oh my gosh, it's not that bad," shut up, let me talk. Now, put down the waifu pillow, put it down. Max was raised driving an intentionally sabotaged car by his dad in order to make him a better driver every race. So first of all, what a nice father figure. And secondly, that's a sign of how bad this car really is. Not only this, but Max's relationship with the FIA has also gotten super unstable, especially when he continues to get hit with time penalties for small incidents on track. Now, I understand that Max is an aggressive driver with a specific style for racing, but it seems that he loves to get boned by the FIA more and more. Now, the car isn't the only thing that's unstable with this team, especially when you know the team that's actually behind it. First up, we've got Christian Horner, who cheated on his wife with one of his staff members. Oh, you can't prove that. Shut the fuck up. Look, there you go. One Google search. That's all it took. So now that we know that Christian Horner doesn't just suck but also swallows, we can compare him to Helmut Marko, the man who is so old that he was born when the entire grid looked like this. These teams are known for being toxic, not only with their team, but the drivers that they chose for it as well. The other week I released a video on each one of the Formula 1 teams on the grid, but since then, Red Bull have essentially boned Liam Lawson, sending him back to Racing Bulls. And not only that, but replacing him with his former teammate Yuki Tsunoda. What's worse is Liam was told about his demotion through social media. So not only was he getting replaced, but also flamed by the media. Now, I'm not going to say that Yuki is the worst driver for the position, because trust me, if I had my way, he would have started the season there. But nonetheless, even then, Yuki is also struggling in the car right now because of its poor handling. And most fans outside of Red Bull would usually argue that the car is catered for Max's driving style, as the steering wheel has a little more oversteer. But when Max is finishing in almost P8 every race, it's impossible to even argue it's tailored purposely anymore. It's just a stinky car with a stinky team behind it. The only decent one left was Adrian Newey until he decided he had enough and left to Aston Martin. And honestly, I do not blame you, Adrian. Not one single bit. So how would I define the fan base behind the team? Honestly, almost cult-like. Max himself is given a lot of good credit, and honestly rightfully so, for the abysmal car performance. But if you're Yuki, you're a little short on praise, and not because he's tiny. The only way I feel is reasonable to criticize them is by using a very professional graph. The fans of Red Bull, B tier, Alpine. Now, with Alpine fans, I can save time and cut straight to the chase and put them straight into F tier. You're probably wondering why, and I assure you, there's a very rational reason. It's because they're French. This team also used to be known as Renault with some great legacy, as they provided a rookie, Fernando Alonso, with 2 world championship titles in 2005 and 6. However, this team loved to make their life harder, especially in 2008 with the crash scandal where they got caught with opposing teams' nudes. Oh wait, that's not Alpine, that's Christian Horner. Now, fans of this team are very rare to come by, so they're definitely more of an underdog team. However, recently, as of writing this, they have actually been doing concerningly well. Pierre Gasly has been having some crazy good race times and almost defended Max Verstappen with his tractor for the entirety of the last race. As well as this, we've also had Jack Doohan, who has had some rough races recently. What's worse is Colapinto is the 3rd team's driver spot, so if Doohan doesn't start carrying his weight, well, we know what's going to happen. Now, over the last few years, this team have been really struggling with fighting their way back out of the back of the grid to a more midfield position. And surprisingly, Pierre Gasly is crawling his way up the grid with every sprint race to carry the team up. So for the fans themselves, they're living in a relatively decent life at the moment. For now, at least, anyway. So this could be a good sign for the team and also their sponsors. One of which being Ryan Reynolds, who I would invite over to my place for a steak dinner whenever he felt like it. So, you come here often?
Yeah, I mean, I work around the corner.
Sit on my face. Racing Bulls. Now, with the Racing Bulls, they are known as a lot of things, but their name is so long that they've had to abbreviate it to VCarb. Not only are they known for their long name, but also apparently as Red Bull Sugar Free.
The count of 2.
Sugar-free Red Bull. Right, okay.
Now, of course, Racing Bull's only really being known as Red Bull's junior team. Now, this team have gone through a series of old names, including Toro Rosso, AlphaTauri, and now Visa Cash App Racing Bulls. But this team were one of the best teams to bring in new drivers. We've seen drivers like Sebastian Vettel, Carlos Sainz, Alex Albon, Pierre Gasly, and a chunk of other incredible drivers come through here. However, this team gets passed around more than Christian Horner, or your mother. This place's environment is just straight toxic, especially when you realize how uncertain the team's positions are. For example, when we look at Daniel Ricciardo, when he deserved to have a seat back at Red Bull, but instead he was shoved out like Carlos Sainz with Ferrari. Now, the drivers on this team at the start of the season were Yuki and Isaac Hadjar, but as of now, we currently have Isaac still, but also Liam Lawson. Now, Isaac Hadjar has been doing incredible this year. However, with the current performance of the main team Red Bull car, I don't see Isaac wanting promotion anytime soon.
Go fuck yourself.
We don't negotiate with terrorists.
After watching the season so far, I feel I can comfortably say that the car right here is somehow a better all-around car than the main teams. The simple reason for this being the fact that the car is just simply better in every way. It seems to understeer less than the main car at times, and generally has about the same pace as the main car. And I can assure that as in the last race, Isaac was making light work of people in the midfield and kept a close gap in the two Williams cars at the end of Jeddah. Meanwhile, Yuki Tsunoda on the main team spent the entire race jacking off to the wall. It's strange because as the season has came along, I've noticed a lot more of the main Red Bull fans deciding to switch their belief more to the second team over the main team, which honestly just makes sense. I would too if my team's car essentially was a tractor, which is a real shame when you realize how much faster the car's pace was on average for the seasons prior to it. Let's be real, we all know, including Racing Bull fans, that the GOAT Logan Sargent should be the lead Red Bull seat. So for that, they only get B tier. Haas. Now initially with Haas I was going to shit on them for the fact that they're American, but honestly this team this year have actually generally surprised me. When the season started, I honestly expected them to place around the P8 in the Constructors' Championship, but as of writing this...
Don't like this video.
Now, of course, this is mainly as a byproduct of them taking in two new drivers who are very talented, especially when we've got Oliver Behrman to drive for them this year, and I can't, I fucking love this kid. During the Chinese Grand Prix, I've never seen a rookie be more cocky after overtaking someone in a track. Genuinely, I actually felt bad for the drivers that were left behind. On top of that, we had Ocon, who was currently in P9 in the championship. Now, I've never been a huge fan of Ocon, but his performance so far this season has been relatively consistent. However, if I was to describe being a fan of this team, I would imagine it feeling like rooting for your best friend with an eating disorder, because they struggle to say the least. Like, the biggest moment I'd felt for this team's entire history was when Roman Grosjean managed to secure a P4 finish in a race. Only P4. So this team struggles to say the least. Not only are this team struggling with consistency, but also because of the fact that they are just flat broke. Some of the older teams on the grid like Ferrari and McLaren have seen up to $50 million heritage bonuses. However, when this team joined the grid, Fernando Alonso had already raced for 15 years. So if I had to describe the fan base for this team, it would be as simple as non-existent, D tier. Before I start talking about the next team, I just wanted to say that I actually have a Twitter page where I post pretty much all the memes I use in these videos, so please, if you want to follow me over there, please do. Please. Aston Martin. Aston Martin is a strange team to discuss when it comes to the fan base surrounding it. When I discussed how they would perform this season earlier last month, they somehow proved me wrong. Especially when we have Lance Stroll currently occupying P10 in the championship. Somehow, Danny's Money's managed to get his car into the top 10 this season. And the craziest part is he's yet to kiss the walls on the track this season. But yet, I still can't name a single person who supports Lance Stroll, other than his dad. Now, this team's fan base are not coming from the fact they're a good team. The only reason people support this team is because of the star driver Fernando Alonso. Alonso is a very experienced driver in Formula 1, especially when you look at the fact that when he won his first championship, the youngest rookie on the F1 grid looked like this. Now this has always been the case with Aston Martin, because they used to be known as Racing Point, then before that they were Force India and Jordan, but this team has seen its fair share of depth evasion, and then came Lance Stroll, former owner of Prima Power Team, a junior F1 team that sounds more like an episode of Power Rangers. So this team have a lot of financial backing, as well as a fan base who love watching Alonso rate. Yeah, why this team placed in P7? I can give a simple answer. Just because daddy will pay for your race car doesn't mean he'll pay for a good one. So this team at the moment are driving with the same amount of engine power as a Siemens French door bottom freezer with black stainless steel. And you know it's bad when the steering wheel of the car is even deciding to eject itself on its own. The team's only selling point is the fact it had Sebastian Vettel and then now Alonso. Without them, this team wouldn't even have a fan base, especially when the team is built in an organic way. Oh shit, sorry. I'm getting some breaking news here. I'm gonna have to stop this video. Lance Stroll has unfortunately been found alive in his home this morning. So, unfortunately, we gotta put these guys in F tier. McLaren. Now, McLaren is one of the best teams arguably on the grid, with 2 talented drivers in 2 insanely fast cars. And what's better, this season they have been dominating the Constructors and World Championship. So surely there's nothing bad about this team, right? Well, that would be if Lando Norris got out of his own fucking head, because the man is simply allergic to winning. This man is so much in his head while racing that he can't even take himself seriously. Now, this team have also been on the grid for a hot minute. So long, in fact, that they're almost as historic as Ferrari. They've won multiple championships back in their prime and are even given 30 million heritage bonus just for their long-standing contribution to the sport. However, the team over the last few years has struggled. At one point about 5 years ago, they were so far behind that they were around P15. However, if you're 15 or active on the internet, you probably know that this team is the easiest to root for because of their social media. They also somehow managed to win the Constructors' Championship off of Red Bull after Checo spent half of the season kissing the walls. But this season has seen a disappointing one for Lando Norris fans, as he's been having a rough time racing his teammate Oscar Piastri. Now, Oscar has been dominating in almost every category of this season, and even outraced Max Verstappen's tractor in Jeddah. So it's now up to Lando to somehow catch up to Oscar to prove that he deserves the first driver spot. This team have been having issues with who is their first and second drivers for a little while, and honestly, it feels like now is whoever wins this year's championship will be priority for future years. Oscar has in fact been winning so much though that he's taken up a new hobby itself, and that hobby is crashing into twin towers. The fans for this team are extremely loyal, as they are what I would describe as chronically online. If there was a statistic for the probability of creeps, I would guess that this time probably have the most, closely followed by Christian Horner. McLaren, B tier. Kick Sauber. Now, Kick Sauber is, I would argue, the strangest fan base of the entirety of F1. Kick is one of the most hated upon teams because of the fact that it's backed by a gambling website. But not only is Kick sponsored entirely by gambling websites, but what's worse is that Jack Doherty and Aiden Ross are on it. They have housed some incredible drivers like Sergio Perez, but Kick Sauber have to this date never won a championship and love to finish with no points at the end of the season. This team have had so much bad luck. However, in Australia this year, Hulkenberg somehow managed to pull the glorified bugger car into the highest points the team has seen in over a year. A whopping 6 points, 2 more than they managed to get the entirety of last season. This team are actually so bad to the point where people are making edits of the drivers fixing their mistakes instead of doing something useful. Now, this year with Hulkenberg, we also have Gabriel Bortoleto, a kid that I can't sugarcoat so far this season because he has been performing straight ass. He's finished at the bottom of every race and has yet to score a single point with their car. Now, unfortunately, to the veil of Jack Doherty fans, they'll be changing from Kick to Audi next year, and this will hopefully help the team's performance. But for fans right now, I would say they've dropped a solid 25% of their fan base so far this year, mainly because they've probably taken the easy way out of life. Kick fans, I would only put in F tier. Mercedes. Now, coming into the season, I expected Mercedes to be a bit of a train wreck, but to be honest with you, I'm surprised to see how well they've been doing. Whatever fans manage to stay at Mercedes are having the time of their life as they watch Lewis Hamilton finish 2 to 3 positions behind them in almost every race. And the probability of this team taking Lewis back is almost slim to none at this point. I would also honestly argue that this team have almost alienated themselves over the last few years. Don't believe me? Then just watch this.
What loves you is right over that horse.
The fanbase of Mercedes I could only describe in one word: loyal. These guys lost their star driver, and whoever is left is the most genuinely loyal members. They've been struggling fully for the last few years, and it's genuinely surprising to see that they somehow now have the 3rd fastest car on the grid. What's funniest in my eyes is how the team is essentially mollycoddling this 17-year-old who's still in school, and they're even gifting him cars that he legally can't drive for another 4 years. This team's fan base, I'ma put in S tier. If you're a Williams fan right now, the only way I could describe you is straight rock solid, hard as a Santa Claus actor at a birthday party. This team are having one of the biggest redemption stories of the last 4 years in Formula 1. Not only are the team doing well, but also the fans, because they are continuously being fed crash outs from Alex Albon in every race because of how locked in he is. Now, this season the car they're driving isn't as fast as some of the other midfield cars, so instead they've adopted a new logic: crash the cars as much as they have to in order to win. Even their team principal has been encouraging them to drive the car as fast as they can, so what's left is the 2 drivers holding on for dear life with 2 cars that they've been given. The team themselves have also been doing what they can in order to hold on to the positions as a team rather than just as individuals. So honestly, this team is great. Not only are the team great, but the drivers themselves. We have Carlos Sainz, who was shoved out of Red Bull and Ferrari, and now since he joined Williams, he's essentially been clutching up for what was a terrible place for the team. Alongside him was Alex Albon, who has also got shoved out of Red Bull and forced into Williams. If I genuinely had to rate this team at the moment and the fanbase around it, I think I would be unfair to not put them in A tier, even if they aren't performing high on the grid. Ferrari. When it comes to Ferrari, the only way I could describe this fanbase right now is cultish. They have the most wins as well as most championships of the entire sport. However, since the middle of last season, I would argue this team have been bent over more than a child in a priesthood.
Stay out, stay out, stay out.
This team have been one of the backbones of the sport since it joined when the sport started, essentially. And in their past, were one of the head runners for the entire thing. They're seen as that important that they're paid almost $15 million every year just to be in the sport. The only reason being that if they were to suddenly disappear, they could lose nearly 50% of the fan base for the sport. Not only this, but they now have taken Lewis Hamilton, who, as we discussed in the last video, has had his fair share of bad luck recently. However, this season, Hamilton decided that maybe if he would double the negativity, that it might cancel itself out. But nowadays, Lewis is somehow being outqualified by a 17-year-old in the same car that he drove last year. So things keep getting worse and worse for this team. And for the fan base, it feels the very same way. I look at the Red Bull and McLaren fan base always arguing about which team is worse, when realistically being a Ferrari fan right now is similar to purgatory.
Shove it right up, nothing to do with.
Jesus.
This year's races have been even worse for the team. As I'm making this, we've had 4 interesting races so far where Lewis Hamilton has been eternally boned in almost every single one of them. For example, on the Australian Grand Prix, he had a tough time adjusting to the car where he got overtaken by Oscar Piastri, who just learned how to pop his car into reverse courtesy of Jeremy Clarkson. Then we went to China and Lewis was so up, he had an incredible opening when he got pole position in the sprint, to then bottle the entire race and end up kissing his teammate's car and finishing in a position behind him. Not only this, but Leclerc somehow had more pace than Lewis even when he was missing half of the front of his car. But okay, like P5 and P6 isn't that bad, right? Well, it is when you get disqualified for illegal car regulations. But okay, now surely the Grand Prix in Japan will be something changing, right? Well, it would have been if Lewis didn't finish 10 seconds behind Kimi Antonelli. Keeping in mind, he was a rookie and still in high school. And then we had Jeddah, where I don't even want to talk about Jeddah. Jesus Christ. I'll put it like this. Oscar Piastri crossed him on a corner that he shouldn't have even had to. So I would describe supporting this team like a series of the following. We're so up, then it's so over. And for this season, I could only call it suicidal.
Look how easy it is to be racist. Let's continue.
Subscribe so I can pay rent.